Hey everyone, welcome back to Noiseberry Records. It is the end of the year, which means it's time for a top 5 video. Just before I get into my top 5 albums of this year, just wanted to quickly apologize for, I think, this being literally the only video on this channel all year. I did want to do some cool record unboxings this year, and I had 2 really cool ones lined up for November, December, and then unfortunately Canada Post went on strike 6 weeks ago at the time of recording, and they've only just started again. So the cool records, the box sets I wanted to show off on video have not arrived yet, and will arrive in the new year, and I will still show them off in a video. But yeah, I did have a couple of plans for the channel this year, and they just did not happen. So yeah, I'll try and do a couple more unboxings next year. For anyone new to these kinds of videos, the format is I go from 5 down to 2, and then before I do my album of the year, I go over my honorable mentions. Sometimes there's dishonorable mentions, none of those yet this year, which is quite nice. And I should say that my musical taste leans very, very heavily towards the core side of heavy music. So there'll be a lot of metalcore, deathcore, and post-hardcore on this list, and not much else. So if that's not your kind of scene, you might not get too much out of this video, but that's what my list will be. Since this is the Noiseberry Records channel, I wanted to do something a little bit different for my list this year. For anything I mentioned that I have a physical copy of, I will show it off. And so let's go right into my number 5 album of the year, which is Hyperviolence by the band Wind Waker.
All the base boys wanna talk shit. I'm the real go, I'm the real go. I don't think so.
This album was described as like hyperpop meets metalcore, and there's really not that much hyperpop on this album. A fair bit of like regular pop, but this band put out an EP earlier in the year with basically 4 songs from this album, and I thought they were all fantastic. There was a really heavy song on there called The Wall. There was a song that really reminded me of Bad Omens and like a little bit of Issues in Villain. And I actually got to see them in Calgary just before the album came out, so they played most of that EP, a couple of older songs and a couple of songs from the upcoming album. They were great. The album was fantastic. It's very, very poppy, very, very catchy, but I absolutely loved it. That's kind of the sort of metalcore I lean towards, the poppier stuff, which is funny because I don't listen to like any pop music outside of metalcore. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to hold up a physical copy for every entry on this list, including honorable mentions, but I've got a good few of them at least, which brings us to my number 4 album of the year, which is The Crucible of Life by The Home Team. This is a band I was not familiar with at all before this year. I went through a big post-hardcore phase, kind of in like the spring, early summer of this year. And I found a list of upcoming post-hardcore releases that lots of people were excited for, and this was one of them, this album by The Home Team. So I saved it and gave it a go when it came out. And I was just obviously in the wrong headspace when it first came out, because I listened to like the first song. There were no harsh vocals. It was very like funky and stuff, and I was like, this is just not what I'm in the mood for right now. So I left it for probably a month or 2, and I actually ended up listening to it on vacation when I was in the UK over the summer, and it just clicked for me then. I must have been in the right headspace for the album at that point, and I absolutely loved it. It's very, very similar to Beautiful Oblivion era Issues, which is an Issues album that I actually really dislike. But it totally worked for me with this band. And I mentioned them to my friend Robbie because we were both massive Issues fans. And I said, hey, this is a bit like Beautiful Oblivion Issues, because I think that's his favorite Issues album. And then a little while later, I saw like a list of the band members, and the singer for The Home Team is called Brian Butcher, and for some reason that name like stuck in my head, And it was then I remembered that at the end of 2023, Issues did a farewell concert series, and one of those shows was live streamed on Beeps, and Robbie and I both watched it because we're massive Issues fans. And I realized that Brian Butcher, the singer of the home team, was the singer for that Issues show, and it definitely wasn't a coincidence that this album sounded a lot like Issues. I mean, he sounds quite a bit like Tyler Carter. My number 3 album of the year is one that I did not expect to be on here, mostly based on the album artwork, is Half Living Things by Alpha Wolf. And I just want to make sure people see this album artwork. It's weird. It's really weird artwork. I don't like the artwork at all. And just based on the artwork and the features on this album, because one of the songs features Ice-T, I was expecting to be really disappointed with this album. And here it is at my number 3. This album is excellent. Alpha Wolf are really, really heavy, aggressive metalcore from Australia. Hardly any clean vocals at all. Like I said, really, really heavy. And I think like the first song that came out from this album was called like Bring Back the Noise. And I think I tried the single. I was like, what's happened to the band I love? And then I think it just all kind of worked on the full album. Just listening to it as a single, I was let down. But when I listened to the full album a couple of times, it all worked. And honestly, the song featuring Ice-T, which is called Sucks to Suck, dreadful titles. I think that's honestly one of my favorite songs on this album. The Ice-T feature is awesome. The breakdown after the Ice-T feature is amazing. So yeah, incredibly heavy. Wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but yeah, here it is at number 3, and I keep going back to this album. I should mention that the way I make my list is I make a list of every album that I think will be a contender throughout the year, and as we get closer to the end of the year, I make a playlist with all of those albums and shuffle it just when I don't have anything else to listen to. And I can have a link to the Apple Music version of that playlist in the description below if people are interested. And basically I just see how I react when those albums or songs from those albums come on. And depending on if I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's, I like this, but maybe it doesn't quite make the top 5. Or when the Alpha Wolf songs came on, I'd be like, yeah, this is great stuff. So that's kind of how I decide my top 5. I just listen to the albums over and over and see how they make me feel. Coming in at number 2, I've got Posthuman Next Gen by Bring Me the Horizon. This one was so close to being my album of the year, and it was kind of a toss-up for most of the year. But we'll get to my album of the year in a bit. This is Bring Me the Horizon's second release in a row that has made, I believe, the top 5. I definitely talked about their previous EP, Survival Horror, I think it was called, when that came out, but I think that was like 3 or 4 years ago. And so this is it was definitely meant to be an EP, but the album's like 14 songs, so it's a full album. And oh my god, it's so good. I went pretty off Bring Me the Horizon for a while when they were in the super poppy phase. I didn't mind That's the Spirit. Really did not like Ammo. But then they've really kind of returned to form with these last 2 Posthuman albums. And I honestly think this album is one of their absolute best in their whole discography. It brings back a ton of heaviness that's been missing or that was missing from That's the Spirit and Ammo, but it's still got a lot of poppy sensibilities that they've incorporated from those albums. And there's some surprisingly heavy stuff in there that I really didn't think we'd hear from them again, and this album just kind of really surprised me at how good and how heavy it was in places. Okay, well now I'll go through my honorable mentions. I think I'll go through them fairly quickly because there's a decent amount on the list, and I'm excited to get to the album of the year. And I still need to do my Apple Music replay as well at the end of this video. First honorable mention goes to Violent Delights by Galleons. This is just a fantastic post-hardcore album. Great mix of wonderful clean vocals, very, very catchy choruses, and really good Dance Gavin Dance-esque harsh vocals. Next is Cure by Era. This one's a little bit of a letdown after their self-titled album, which was my album of the year from 2 or 3 years ago whenever it came out. Yeah, definitely a step down. Quite a bit more experimental than their previous album, but I still really liked it. Just definitely not enough to give it a top 5 spot. And funnily enough, I believe this one came out the exact same day as the Alpha Wolf album. So I was kind of expecting to be let down on both of these albums. And yeah, I really like Cure. But yeah, a little bit of a step down from their last one. And next we've got an EP. We got this little fella here. This is the Poetic Edda EP by Synestia and Disembodied Tyrant. Very happy I have that one. That's quite a rare one. I think it only had there were 2 variants of it and 500 copies of each, and it sold out very quickly. This is a 4-song symphonic deathcore EP. Symphonic deathcore is deathcore with a bunch of orchestral elements. Absolutely my kind of deathcore. Before I realized that this was my genre of deathcore, I just kind of tried a bunch of it and thought some of it was okay. And then Lorna Shore really clicked with me last year, I think it was. And it was then that I realized, oh, there's other bands that have all these cool orchestral elements, and that's definitely my kind of deathcore. And this is just 4 solid songs back to back. It's really, really solid EP. Next, we've got The Mosaic by Capstan. Capstan are an excellent post-hardcore band. This, I think, is definitely better than their previous album, and this is quite the album. When it's called The Mosaic, that's very, very apt because it's really a mishmash of a bunch of different genres, all kinds of inspirations on this album. They've got some really soft stuff, a couple of acoustic-y ones. They've got the heaviest song they've ever written on here. A really great variety. And it all ends with the final track called The Mosaic, which I believe is 13 minutes long, and is basically a motif of every other song on the album, and it's a really cool closer. Next, we've got the final album I have a physical copy of. This is Immortal Disfigurement's King. Slightly problematic band, but they are also symphonic deathcore. The vocalist is previous vocalist of Lorna Shore when they released the Immortal album. Very, very problematic person, but I really liked the album and I'm quite happy to have it on vinyl. Next we've got The Fear of God by Convictions. This is a Christian metalcore band that I just discovered this year. Was very, very impressed by this album. Very heavy in places and also very, very catchy. Yeah, I thought this one was great. Next we've got Second Shadow by Inertia. This one's fairly standard metalcore, I'd guess. Fairly similar to Polaris, stuff like that. It doesn't break any boundaries, but it's really good to listen to. Next we've got Midnight in Limbo by Gloomchild. This is a band that I only just discovered this year. They've got quite a few albums, and God, I was just blown away by this one. This is probably, if this was a top 6 list, this would be on the list for sure. A little bit similar to Holding Absence. I thought it was quite similar to a really cool mixture of old Dayseeker and new Dayseeker. Very emotional, post-hardcore, some pretty heavy stuff, a little bit of proggy stuff in there. Really great album. And the last honorable mention goes to Negative Spaces by Poppy. As a wrestling fan, I've been familiar with Poppy a little bit, but never listened to her music. And I saw people were talking about her latest album on the metalcore subreddit, and one of the top comments was this is unironically heavier than a lot of bands that get posted on the metalcore subreddit. And so I listened to it, and they weren't kidding. There's some really, really heavy stuff on here. There's one song, it's pretty short, it's 2 minutes long, where she just does harsh vocals the entire time. But then there's some really catchy, very pop-y songs, like Vital and Halo are very, very, very pop. But they're awesome, and yeah, I really, really like this album. And so that brings us to my album of the year, and it had to be Whale Fall by Foxblood. Foxblood are an Australian post-hardcore band, probably like the heaviest post-hardcore band I've ever heard. They really do kind of toe the line between post-hardcore and metalcore on this album, and this album is bookended by two absolutely incredible songs. When I first listened to it, I was listening to the first song, and I was like, holy, this is so good. If the rest of the album keeps up, this will absolutely be my album of the year. And the rest of the album doesn't quite keep up because the opening song is so strong. And then it got to the final album of the song. And I think once it finished, I literally replayed that song because I loved that song so much. And pretty much any time I listened to the album, whenever it would get to the end, I would always replay the final song one extra time because I thought it was so good. And literally the opening and final song of this album kind of single-handedly, or double-handedly, carry this album to my #1 spot. Okay, now we get to do something fun and go through my Apple Music replay. So let's give that a go. I haven't watched it before. I'm actually just watching it for the first time in this recording. So let's check it out. That's very loud, and I'm sure most of this is going to be copyright claimed. Listen to a lot of music. Longest streak's 114 days. I don't know if I've gone a day without listening to music. 606 artists. Oh, I need to keep the screen on apparently. One stood out. I mean, it's got to be Foxblood. It had to be. Yeah, 782 minutes. This is my song of the year. Go to Pieces. Monthly top artists. That's pretty cool. Foxblood had 2 of them. More artists in July than any other month this year. Look, there's Lorna Shore, but everything else apart from Lorna Shore is new releases. One was your anthem. Oh, interesting. Was not expecting that to be my top song. I would definitely thought it would be Go to Pieces. That's very interesting. Bunch of albums. This is Foxblood. Yeah, this must be the Foxblood. My album of the year. There we go. 402 minutes. Whoops, sorry. That's a lot. It's a lot of times I listen to that. Top genres. What could it be? Metalcore, post-hardcore, deathcore. There's Alpha Wolf. Just metal. Okay, fine. It doesn't go as in-depth as Spotify, I guess. Well, there's Lorna Shore, hell yeah. That is amazing. I really thought the Whalefall song would be the top song as well. So there we go. Those are my top artists. That's hilarious that Lorna Shore is a top artist. Because I almost exclusively listen to just new albums in the year. But obviously I went back to Pain Remains a lot. But yeah, Foxblood. Like, not only did I listen to the new album a ton, I also went back into their back catalog and listened to practically everything else as well a bunch of times. So yeah, not surprising that Foxblood is my top artist. We only get 4 top songs apparently. I think Villain is on there because not only did I listen to their 4-song EP a bunch, Villain's also on the full album, which I also listened to a bunch, so that kind of makes sense. Haunter is not my favorite song on the Alpha Wolf album, but I like it a lot. Go to Pieces, I definitely thought that would be higher, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's still on there, that's great. Top albums, Whalefall absolutely makes sense. Introsphere by Gravemind, I did not think I listened to it that much. I think because, like, I really liked the previous Gravemind album, I wanted to really give this one a good shot, because it didn't, like, blow me away. And I think I went back to it, like, 3 separate, like, times to see if maybe it would click for me. It just never did. hilarious that Pain Remains is on there. Top genres: metal, rock, hard rock, death and black metal, alternative. Sure, I mean, if you look at everything, there's, I don't think, anything on there that's not metalcore, post-hardcore, or deathcore. There's the top artists by month. All kind of makes sense, you know, it's what came out that month. Apart from September, because I was seeing Misery Signals on their farewell tour in September or October, I think, probably September, and I was just listening to their music a ton before that show. Same with October Mental Cruelty, I was also seeing them in October, so I was just listening to them a bunch before I saw them. We'll just go through these quickly. There's the top songs by month. Again, yeah, mostly new releases there. Top album by month. January, there's not many new releases, so I just listened to the Whitechapel live album. Everything else kind of tracks with the rest of what I've seen. These playlists. So the On the Road playlist is just the playlist that my girlfriend and I listen to whenever we're in the car. So that we've done, that's kind of crazy that I've done 2,600 minutes of driving because the only time we listen to it is when we're in the car. And the rest all makes sense there. A lot of good playlists there. Okay, that's kind of crazy comparing to last year. It's literally twice, like more than twice the amount of time listened to was my top artist. That's crazy. Almost like everything's just kind of double there. That's really cool. Okay, well there you go. That was my album of the year list, my top 5 albums of 2024 list. I will have a link to the playlist of all the albums mentioned in this just on Apple Music in the description. Let me know your top 5 albums as well, or if you happen to be doing a podcast, I will listen to that episode and whenever it comes out. Make sure you check out my gaming channel, Noiseberry Games, if you want to see my top 5 games of the year. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!